Okay, everybody, so now we're going to take a look at our very first introduction to programming activity. And first I'll introduce again the problem that we're going to be solving. So the problem goes as such. You have a cat and you have 3 mice. 1, 2, 3. Okay. For simplicity's sake, we've numbered the mice 1, 2, 3. And here's the things that can happen. The cat will go after one of the mice at random. Now, of course, the word random is important here. There's no pattern to the way the cat picks a mouse. It just randomly picks one of the 3 mice and then immediately goes after it in a direct line. Second thing that happens, when the cat gets halfway from where it started to where it's going to stop. So for example, if this cat's going to go for mouse 1, it's going to go directly towards it, but when it gets halfway from where it started to where it's going to stop, and then it's going to drop a dot right there, or we like to be crude and say boop right there, and then it's going to go back and repeat step 1. So in step 1, it's now going to pick another random mouse. It could be the same mouse, but let's say this time it picks random mouse 2. Now it's going to go in a direct line from where it started, and when it gets halfway, it's going to stop and drop a dot, and then the process continues. Let's say this time it randomly picks mouse 2 again. It's going to go halfway from where it was, and it's going to stop. So the problem we're looking to solve is, if this continues on forever, which is what step 4 is, it's going to go back to step 1, what shape will all the dots create on the screen? So that's the problem. Okay? To solve this, we're going to use a little tool, okay, off of a website as an introduction to programming. Okay? That tool is a website that was built to help learn computer science by computer scientists at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or MIT. And you can find this on my website. So yesterday I showed you how you could set up a web browser to quickly go to my website. And from my website down under weekly events, you can find this activity. But what we're looking for here, which can also be found with a quick Google search, is the website called Scratch. Scratch is the name of the cat that they picked to help build this website. And you're going to click Start Creating. And this is the environment that you can use. This is the tool to help solve this problem. So the analogy of this tool is this area over here where the little cat is called the stage area. You can even see the word stage right here. This cat essentially would be an actor on the stage, although they like to use the word sprite, not actor, right there. Okay? This area in the middle is what they call the script area. So again, fitting that drama theme, scripts are what the actors follow, just like instructions are what programs follow to get the problem solved. And then over here on the left are all the possible scripts or all the possible codes that you can give Scratch the Cat to do the various activities. They are organized into categories over here, so the various categories organize them. And the idea is they're set up to look like puzzle pieces so they can fit together. Alright, so before we start doing anything with scripts or code, we're going to set up our stage with the right actors. So we have one actor, the cat. We're going to put a few more actors onto the stage, which will represent the mice. To do this, there's a button down here at the bottom where we can choose a sprite to either draw it, or we can just pick one from various places. So I'm just going to click Choose a Sprite. Okay. Then I'm going to go to Animals, and I'm going to scroll down to M for mouse, and there it is. I'll move it to a spot, and I can do that again, right? So I can do Choose a Sprite, Animals, scroll down, pick a mouse. Now luckily Scratch was really smart and named this mouse 1 and mouse 2. Very similar to the way we had set it up, so that's going to make our life a little easier. There is another way to do this. You can right click down here and duplicate a sprite. So that's another way to do it, maybe a little bit faster. Okay, so there's our cat and our 3 mice. If you would like to change the size of these particular actors, there are some tools for that too. Okay, you can actually resize them and change them. Like for example, you can type in a number, right, to represent a new size if you'd like. But for the purposes of my demo, I'm not going to bother with that. Okay, so we have our 3 mice. We have our 1 cat named Sprite1 right now. And that's not going to do. I don't like it being named Sprite1. I'm going to rename this thing. And I'm stopping on that for an important point. In computer science, naming things, as simple as it sounds, is actually a fundamental piece of the beginning of learning how to work in computer science. It's too easy to take for granted sometimes things are named for us. But when we name things in computer science, we take ownership of them, and it helps us to get through the problem solving. So Sprite1 is an insufficient name. Mouse 1, Mouse 2, Mouse 3, those are fine. I don't mind those names at all. But instead of Sprite1, I'm going to go here and select the name Sprite1 and erase it, and just name it cat. I think that's more appropriate for what it is. So now I have a cat and 3 mice. Okay, so from this point forward, we're going to now work with just the scripts. Before we get started, it's really important that the one you have highlighted down here is the cat. The 3 mice aren't going to move at all. They're just going to stay in place. The only one that's going to move is the cat. The cat's going to be moving around. So all the scripts for this example are going to go into the cat. All right, so let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the area over here called Events. Okay, and we're going to grab this block here that says When Flag Clicked. I'm also going to click this little magnifying glass button down here to zoom in so it's a little easier for you guys to see the scripts. You don't have to do that on yours. So when I click the flag, what should I do? The flag is located up here. This is kind of like how you start this little simulator, this little program here. Right beside it will be the stop button to stop it. So this would be like, when I click the flag, what should I do? Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to this area here called Control. And in Control, you'll see this strange block that I'm going to pull out right here that has the word Forever on it. Looks like a mutated letter C. And you'll notice this block can snap together with the first block. And that's one nice thing about Scratch. With this puzzle analogy that it uses, you can take these little pieces and it snaps them together almost like they're stuck on a magnet. You can still pull them apart if you need to. If you accidentally put the wrong piece out there, you'll notice sometimes it doesn't snap into the right place, like it won't fit together. That's on purpose. And if this piece is the wrong piece, you can just drag it back over to the left side and it removes it. This little block here, this thing called Forever, you'll notice this little arrow drawn at the bottom of it. This thing is a preview of our very last concept unit in this course, the concept of a loop, or where we get things to keep doing things over and over and over again. This loop just works forever, never stops, which is going to fit with our 4th instruction up here, that it will repeat step 1 forever. Okay. Next up, we need what's called an extension in Scratch. In the early versions of Scratch, this was already attached here, but we're going to need this to be attached, added in. So I need you to go down to the bottom of the left side here where it says Add Extension, and I want you to click on that. And second from the top, I want you to click on the one that says Pen. We're going to create a pen to simulate just drawing a dot on the screen. Okay. And there we go. Now it's added another little thing down here called the pen. Excuse me. And we're going to need that to draw what we need on the screen here. Okay, so to do this, we're going to grab this very first one at the top, Erase All, because we might run this program more than once, and so we want to start by erasing everything. And then we're going to use this one here that says Set Pen Color. And it says 2, and then it has a little sort of colorful area here. This colorful area is supposed to represent what they call a paint swatch. You notice those when you go to a place like Home Depot. When you buy a new can of paint, they have these little cards where you can kind of sample which color you need. So that's what that's supposed to simulate. And what you can do is you can click on that little color swatch and then set your own colors by dragging these things here. So what I'm going to suggest is the color you pick should be a dark color, because we're going to be drawing on a white background. So we don't want to have a white color on a white background. We'll never see that. So I'm just going to go with just jet black. So my pen will be jet black. I'm going to put these two pieces together. Okay. And then finally, I'm going to have the one that says set pen size to 1. Now be very careful. There's also one that says change pen size by 1. Do not use that one. Okay? We want the one that says set pen size to 1. Okay? Now you can also use this round, oval shaped area to type in a number different than 1, but I want this to be pretty small, so I'm going to just stick with 1. These three pieces that we all snap together, I actually want to insert those in between these two pieces. Okay? Now you can do that by pulling this apart, sliding this in place, and then snapping it back together. That works. Or there are other ways. You actually could have tried to just slip them in by just sneaking them in the middle, and it'll usually push it out of the way and snap it together for you. Okay, so that's where we are so far. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks put together. This won't really do anything at this point, so there's no need to bother clicking the flag or anything at this point. All right, the next thing we're going to learn about involves us going over here on the left side and down to near the bottom and clicking on this thing called variables. This introduces the first major concept of this course, the concept of having a computer remember things. Now we're going to go into a lot more detail in that unit, but a variable is essentially just having your computer program remember something important. And in the case of the cat in this problem, if we go back to here, what does the cat need to remember? It just needs to remember which mouse it's chasing. So if it randomly picks mouse 3, it needs to remember that's the mouse I'm chasing after. So what we're going to do is back here in Scratch, we're going to click on this little button up at the top that says make a variable. This will pop up, and we need to give our variable a name. This brings me back to the point I had earlier, that in computer science, naming things is actually very important. So, believe it or not, in computer science we don't name things the same way we do in math or even in science class. We go a little further. So in math class, as you can imagine, when you're working in algebra and things like that, you're going to name variables things like x and y, and they kind of have no real meaning. There's no reason to name them those letters per se. Science goes a little further. So in science class, if you're working on a formula and you're, say, calculating time or distance, those variable names usually are named something like t for time or d for distance. That's a little better. That name is a little more clear as to what it's representing. In computer science, we go a step further. If we need something to be remembering time, we're going to name our variable time. We're going to type all those letters out. If we wanted to remember distance, we're going to call it distance, so that it's very clear exactly what we're remembering in this case. So in this case, what we're going to need to remember is our mouse that we want to get would be one way to look at it. But here's a bit of a problem. I wrote the words mouse space to space get, which is like a sentence in normal writing. Unfortunately, the way the computer will interpret this isn't one variable, it's 3 variables. Mouse would be one, 2 would be another one, and get would be the third one, because the 2 spaces would give the computer a clue that you're thinking about 3 different variables. So that's not good. Now we could just call it mouse, that's okay. We could just call it M, that's not as good. And we could call it something like X, but again, that's getting away from the point. It doesn't really represent what we need it to remember. So instead what we're going to use is we're going to go back to the words mouse to get. But I'm going to use a little tricky technique to avoid putting a space in there. Instead of putting a space, I'm going to capitalize the T of 2, and then I'm going to capitalize the G of get. Now, let me just take a second to type that on this screen here for you in bigger writing. Okay? So when you see this, you'll notice something interesting about the way I did that. So by capitalizing these two letters, what happens is it creates a bit of a visual cue. So as your eye is reading along the line here, it gets to that capital letter and it sees it's a little bit bigger and more pronounced. And then it goes back to the lowercase letter. And then it gets to the capital letter, it sees it's more pronounced, and then it gets to the lowercase letters. This is a technique. It's been used in sort of graphic arts and other places as well, but programmers use this technique to avoid using a space, so I don't have to put a space here or here. And yet it's still easy for people to read it. And this technique is called camel casing. It has other names as well, but I like that one because it creates a visual cue as if there's some sort of camel here. Look at my great art skills here. There's some sort of camel. Camels have tails, right? And these would be the two humps of the camel, creating that visual cue that that is in fact the thing that separates the three words. So anyways, that was a long explanation for the variable we're going to be creating called mouse to get, and then click OK. By default in Scratch, it leaves the variable up on the stage so we can see it. If you don't like that, you can uncheck it here so it's not visible. I'm going to leave it visible. Okay, so now we have this variable, mouse to get. Okay, so what we're going to do while we're still on variables is we're going to grab this block that says set, and then it has our variable right there, mouse to get. If we had more than one variable, then we could pick them from the list right here. We can also use this little list to rename the variable and things like that if we wanted to. But we're going to just take this little block and place it inside of that forever block. All right, next up, we're going to go over here to the section called operators. Okay? Operators is a fancy word for just stuff in math. So adding and subtracting and multiplying, those are operators. But if you look through this list, the fifth one down, if I pull it out, is one that says pick random 1 to 10. That's pretty good. That's kind of what we wanted, but not to 10. So instead of the number 10, I'm going to select this little oval bubble and type the number 3 in there. So pick random 1, 2, 3. You'll also notice this shape is an oval shape, which is perfect. We can take this shape and fit it in place of what was right there. So that is really handy, that we can fit that right there in place right there. I'm going to click this little button right here. There's two buttons over here along the side, three buttons actually, to just reduce the size of the stage right now. I don't really need to work with the stage, so I'm just going to do this so I can make this code bigger and so that you guys can see it more clearly. You do not need to do this. This is just something I'm doing so it's easier for you to see the code on the screen. Okay, so there's what it says. Set mouse to get to pick random 1 to 3. At this point, if we wanted to, we could click the flag, and you'll notice right there it is randomly just picking numbers between 1, 2, and 3 repetitively, over and over and over again forever. Hit stop, and we know that that's working at this point. Okay, next up we're going to go to this section here called control. Control brings into play our second major unit in this course on the computer science concepts, the concepts of a conditional statement, which is a fancy word for basically making the computer make a decision. So in this section, you'll notice this weird block. I'm going to pull it out and put it on the script area that says if, and then the word then, and it has a weird, almost diamond-like shape in the middle. I want you to place this block inside here under the word set, but still inside of that one called forever. So if you have to pull things apart to get it all lined up, do that so that it looks like that. Okay, so this if then, think of it as asking a question. If something is true, then do something. So inside that area, what we're going to do next is we're going to go back to the area called operators. And in there, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 down, you'll see a block that has an equal sign in it. Something equals 50. Well, I don't want 50, so instead I'm going to change 50 just the number 1. So when something equals 1, and you'll notice this strange shaped block fits perfectly into there. If something equals 1, well, what's the something? The something we want, we need to go back to variables. And in variables up at the top, we're going to grab the shape beside the word mouse to get. And that is going to get dropped into that first oval. If the mouse to get equals 1, so in other words, I just picked a random number and I remembered it in the words mouse to get, and if the thing I was remembering was a 1, then I'm going to do something. Okay? So that's what it's supposed to look like. All right. Next up, we're going to get the mouse, or pardon me, the cat, to actually move a little bit. So we're going to go up to the very top here to the circle called motion, which is obviously for moving things around. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab this block in the middle area that says point towards. Okay? So we're going to get the cat to sort of look at the mouse that it's going to go get. So instead of the word mouse pointer, I'm going to click this little down arrow. And here you see I also have my 3 mice as an option here. So I'm going to pick mouse 1. So if the mouse to get is 1, I'm going to point towards mouse 1. And I'm going to test that right now. I'm going to go back and run this. Now I'm actually going to try one other thing. In these 3 buttons up top here, one of them is this one, which actually makes this a lot bigger. And now when I click the flag, you notice when it's a 1, it pointed to mouse 1, but only when it was a 1. Okay, so that worked, but we have some more to do. Now I'm going to grab this block that says move 10 steps. Now 10 steps isn't what we're going to move, but we'll leave that for now, and I'm going to drop that block underneath point towards. So point towards mouse 1 and move 10 steps. If I was to run that right now, it would immediately head towards mouse 1 because it would never stop that action. Okay? So I don't really want that to happen. I want the cat to not do that because let's go back to our instructions. What it's supposed to do is it's supposed to stop halfway there. Okay? So we got to kind of figure that into that. And one thing that's interesting about the words halfway, half is a fraction. Okay? And a fraction is really just a fancy way to say divided by. That's why the division symbol looks like a fraction. So really it means something divided by 2. That's what the fraction means. So let's try to fit that into our problem solving here. We're going to go back to operators, and the 4th one from the top is a division. That's what that slash means. It even looks like a fraction. In the second little bubble, I'm going to put a 2. We divide something by 2. And then I'm going to place this instead of 10 steps. So move something divided by 2. The first bubble we're still going to leave empty for now. Okay? To do this, the first bubble, we're going to use a neat trick in Scratch that you can find under, now this is where I'm a little confused. It's under, oh, I'm sorry, it's under sensing. That makes sense. We're sensing something. And there's a block 4 down from sensing that says distance 2. And once again, I'm going to use the drop down arrow, the distance to mouse 1. Ah, that's exactly what we said there. Halfway from where it was to where the mouse is exactly the distance we're looking for. And I'm going to drop that into that first bubble. Here you can see these little puzzle pieces are piling up on top of each other. But let's just read that. Move the distance to mouse 1 divided by 2. That's exactly what we were hoping for here in the second instruction. Half the distance. So that worked out well. Okay. Now, what we're going to need to do next, just backing up a little bit, is all of those blocks that we were creating, all those if and then and all that, we're going to need to repeat all of this all over again for mouse 2 and then mouse 3. Now, if you want, you can go back and start rebuilding all the pieces one by one. But one of the beauties of working electronically is the power of copy-paste. So what I'm actually going to suggest you do is if you take your mouse pointer and right-click on the word if, you'll notice there's the option to duplicate. Now, let me just back up a little bit. Duplicate. And all of a sudden, your mouse turns into this giant set of blocks, all the same blocks. It copied it right away. Now, let me just try that again. I'm just going to drag that away so it disappears. I right-click, duplicate, and then without clicking, just move your mouse around, and you see you have this big group of blocks. So I'm just going to drop it down here at the bottom. But where you actually need to drop all those blocks is underneath the first one. Now here I've noticed a lot of students make a mistake. Sometimes they'll put it inside like that. Sometimes they'll put it there, or they'll put it up here, etc., etc. So you got to be kind of careful as to exactly where you place that block, or things are going to get all messed up, and you're going to end up having to do it all over again, and it's going to be a huge pain. Okay? So be careful about that. Look at this. I made a big mess here, so I got to clean it up. Okay, so I'm going to right-click, duplicate, and I'm going to suggest you just drop it at the bottom. Okay? Then drag it. It should be inside but underneath the other if. However, we're also going to have to make a couple changes to this second one. It's no longer mouse 1 anymore. The mouse to get is now 2. I type a 2 right there. Move the distance to. It's no longer mouse 1. It's now mouse 2. And I'm not going to point towards mouse 1. I'm going to point towards mouse 2. Okay? So that's what it should look like. And then I'm going to repeat that process all over again. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to drop it at the bottom. The mouse to get, I'm going to type in a 3. Change this to a 3. Change this to a 3. Okay? So now it says I randomly pick a mouse to get 1 to 3. If it's 1, if it's 2, if it's 3. Move the distance to that mouse divided by 2 and point towards that mouse. So let's just kind of see what that does. And now you can see the cat is moving around randomly, kind of picking a mouse. Okay, we're getting there. A little bit left to do. The last thing to do now is to actually use our pen. So we're going to go back to pen. Okay? In order to draw a dot, all we need to do is take the pen and drop it down and then lift it immediately back up. So pen down, pen up. These two blocks have to once again be slipped in underneath the 3 if statements. So if, and then pen down and pen up. However, it's still before the bottom of the forever block that we put near the beginning. Okay, so I'm just actually going to take a second to scroll through all these blocks. So it starts here at the top, and then going down, you can see here. This will allow you to check yours with mine. And then the set block, and then the first if, then the second and third if. With the second and third one, make sure those say mouse 2, the number should be 2. With the third one, make sure it says 3, mouse 3, mouse 3. However, this number here, 2 steps, that doesn't change. That's because we're dividing it by 2. And then pen down, pen up, right at the end. All right, time to test this. And let's go back to our original problem. The cat goes after a random mouse. I think we've got random mouse happening. When it gets halfway there, it stops. I think we have that there. The pen will simulate step 3, and we've already put a block in to simulate it forever. to help us hopefully answer this question. What shape will it draw on screen? So I'm going to make this bigger. And I'm actually going to put Google Chrome into full screen mode, so it looks really cool. And let's hit the flag. And it starts drawing the shape. Okay. Now over time, this will actually create a famous geometrical shape called the Sierpinski's triangle. Okay. And that concludes. Actually, let me pause this video for 1 sec. Okay, everybody, I paused the video for a second there to let the program draw a few more dots on the screen. You're now starting to see the shape of the Sierpinski triangle starting to come around here. Okay, it's a famous sort of a thing, the Sierpinski triangle. I'm just going to quickly Google search that. And you'll see right here, well, I'll go to the Wikipedia article. This is that same shape, the Sierpinski triangle, and you can read about its sort of famous geometrical patterns and things like that. So it's kind of a neat thing happening there. And I also, I don't know if you noticed it, while I paused the video, I made the mice smaller. So I actually took some time to actually go in and change the size of the mouse. And I did notice one little mistake in our code, or what programmers call a bug. And I don't know if you guys did this, but the point towards should be before the move in the sequence of events here. And when I ran it the first time, those two blocks were in reverse order. And it kind of doesn't make it look as nice if they are in that reverse order. So that's just something to think about. All right, this concludes our first example. Hope you liked it. Bye.